begins with a promise, a pill to end your pain, a name whispered in a doctor's office, OxyContin, Purdue Pharma, the Sacklers, a name now synonymous with an opioid crisis that hollowed out a generation, an empire of pain management that created an empire of pain. We think we know this story of corporate greed and modern addiction, but what if I told you the Sackler family didn't invent this addiction business model? Before America's opioid epidemic, another empire built its wealth the same way, 200 years earlier. What if their playbook was a direct copy, a blueprint perfected 200 years ago? To understand the opioid crisis in America's heartland, you have to travel back in time to the shores of the South China Sea. You have to uncover the hidden history of the China opium trade. You have to trade the name Sackler for a name far more powerful, a family who mastered the art of turning addiction into unimaginable wealth. The name is Sassoon, and their product was raw, unadulterated opium. This is the shocking, untold story of the world's first truly global drug cartel and one of the most shameful secrets of the British Empire. This is a critique of capitalism itself, exposing the dark truth behind some of the world's greatest fortunes. In the early 19th century, the British Empire had an addiction of its own, not to a drug, but to a leaf, tea. The British were consuming millions of pounds of Chinese tea, silk, and porcelain. The problem? China wanted nothing Britain produced. The Qing dynasty demanded payment in one thing only, silver. This created a catastrophic trade deficit. A great river of silver, the lifeblood of Britain's economy, flowed in only one direction, east. Facing an economic crisis, the empire desperately needed a product the Chinese couldn't resist. They found it in the milky sap of the poppy flower. This is the origin story of one of the darkest chapters in global trade history. The plan was diabolical, and its execution fell to the most ruthless corporation in history, the British East India Company. In a stunning display of imperialism, they transformed the Indian subcontinent. They forced farmers into India poppy cultivation, replacing fields of food with endless carpets of vibrant, deadly flowers. In dark factories, this raw opium was processed into dense, branded balls, a product engineered for addiction with a consistency that would make any modern CEO proud. This wasn't a back alley operation. It was industrial-scale drug manufacturing. But opium was illegal in China. So the East India Company devised a scheme of plausible deniability that Purdue Pharma would later emulate. They auctioned the opium in Calcutta to private smugglers who would run the drug into China. The company kept its hands officially clean, but everyone knew where the money was coming from. Britain had solved its trade deficit by systematically addicting millions of Chinese citizens. This was the birth of the addiction business model. By 1838, the emperor had seen enough. In 1839, Chinese official Lin Zexu arrived in Canton on a mission to eradicate the opium smuggling. He blockaded foreign traders and forced them to surrender their drugs. Over 1,400 tons of opium were destroyed, a powerful act of national sovereignty. In London, the drug traffickers and their lobbyists in Parliament framed it as an attack on free trade. A young William Gladstone called the impending conflict a war more unjust in its origin than any I have read of in history. He was ignored. What followed was the world's first narco-military conflict. British gunboats decimated China's defenses. Britain wasn't fighting for territory or ideology. It was fighting for the right to sell drugs. The 1842 Treaty of Nanking was a dealer's terms. China was forced to pay for the destroyed opium, open its ports, and hand over a barren rock of an island that would become a global financial hub, Hong Kong. The Hong Kong history you know was born from this conflict. The British government had become the enforcer for the world's largest drug cartel. The market was now secure. All it needed was a king. His name was David Sassoon, a brilliant merchant from Baghdad. He arrived in Bombay and saw an opportunity where others saw sin. He understood the future of the China opium trade was in creating a fully integrated global supply chain. The Sassoons did it all. They bought the highest quality opium, built their own fleet of fast ships to smuggle it, and established a distribution network across China. They controlled the product from the poppy field to the opium den. It was vertical integration on a scale never seen before, a masterclass in the history of drug cartels. The family motto was, with purity and consistency, a chillingly accurate description of their business model. From their new headquarters in Hong Kong and Shanghai, David Sassoon and his sons built a dynasty that became known as the Rothschilds of the East. The origins of their wealth were clear. It was built entirely on a puff of smoke. The profits were staggering, making the Sassoons one of the wealthiest families in the world. But what do you do with that kind of money? Money made from misery, you build. You launder its origins in stone and steel. On the muddy banks of Shanghai, the Sassoons built the Shanghai Bund, a grand boulevard of European power. Their masterpiece, the Cathay Hotel, became a monument to the drug trade. In Mumbai, they funded the city's grandest Victorian-era landmarks. Docks, libraries, hospitals, all paid for with opium money. The wealth origins of these colonial jewels trace directly back to the degradation of China. This was more than construction. It was a sophisticated money laundering operation, sanitizing a fortune built on addiction by transforming it into the very symbols of the British Empire. But wealth wasn't enough. David Sassoon and his heirs craved respectability. This began the second phase of their strategy, one that provides haunting historical parallels to our time. They started giving their money away. The Sassoons became titans of Victorian-era philanthropy. They endowed professorships, built galleries, and donated lavishly to the royal family, becoming close friends with the Prince of Wales. The sordid origins of their wealth, rooted in the opium dens of Shanghai, were scrubbed clean in the marble halls of London society. It worked. They were knighted, ennobled, and welcomed into the British aristocracy. The opium dealers had become lords and ladies. Just as the Sackler family would later plaster their name on wings at the Met and Harvard, the Sassoons proved that if a fortune is large enough, society will forgive its origins. They mastered the art of using philanthropy to launder a legacy. But empires of addiction do not last forever. By the early 20th century, a global moral awakening began to condemn the opium trade. The public conscience was finally catching up to the crime. The Sassoons, ever pragmatic, saw the writing on the wall. They had already been reinvesting their drug profits into legitimate businesses, banking, real estate, shipping. They quietly divested from opium, moving their capital into new industries. By the time the trade was finally outlawed, the Sassoons were long gone, having successfully transitioned from drug lords to respectable global financiers. Their reputation was secure. Their name and the David Sassoon legacy was clean. History, it seemed, had granted them a pardon. But history has a long memory, and its echoes are all around us. Consider the business model, a highly addictive product marketed for its consistency, yet a sophisticated distribution network, a strategy of co-opting the establishment, first with gunboats, later with lobbyists, and a philanthropic machine designed to launder a reputation and feign corporate responsibility. Does any of this sound familiar? From the poppy fields of 19th century India to the pill mills of 21st century America, the playbook is the same. The product changes, the names change, but the core business remains, profiting from the managed addiction of a vulnerable population. The Sacklers didn't invent this model. They inherited it, updating it for an age of FDA approvals and medical marketing. The pharmaceutical industry history is deeper and darker than we imagine. The story of the Sassoons is more than a forgotten chapter of colonialism history. It's a warning. It proves that an addiction crisis is not accidental. It can be an engineered business strategy, protected by the powerful and sanitized by the wealthy. It teaches us that those who profit from misery will always seek to buy respectability, to write their own histories in the stone of museum wings. And it forces us to ask, when we look at the corporate giants of today, are we seeing the full picture? Or are we, like the Victorians who celebrated the Sassoons, blind to the true cost of the fortunes we admire? The past is never dead. The empire of the Sassoons may be gone, but the ghost of its addiction business model still haunts us. And until we recognize these historical parallels, we are doomed to watch the story play out again and again. If you thought Purdue was bad, wait until you see who wrote their playbook.